I just finished watching season 1 of Fresh Off the Boat, and wow, did I not expect this show to be as good as it was. We're going to break it down as much as we can because it's a little bit difficult with these more like comedy-based shows, because while there is a story, it's more like it kind of varies from episode to episode and just tries to be entertaining. But I enjoyed it. We're going to be breaking it down. We're going to be talking about how much I liked, how much I didn't like. Not a clue how long this recording is going to go, but we're going to talk about it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. So my wife ended up she was bored one day and she was scrolling through Disney Plus, and then she ended up watching like this show Fresh Off the Boat that she never heard about. Don't know why she came to the conclusion to start watching that, but she loved the episode that she watched, and then she called me later on and was like, "You want to watch the show with me? It's actually really good. It's about this Asian family who comes and moves into Orlando when there were no Asian families over there." And I was like, "Okay, you know what? Sounds good. The potential that's like really, really solid." So we sat down and we are already moving through season 2. Like, the show is great. So the show, the main character is kind of like, I would say mostly just Eddie and Eddie's two parents, although the show seems to follow Eddie just a little bit more. The show takes place in 1995, and this family moved to Orlando when apparently like they're the only Asian family around the area. You have a couple really funny moments where Eddie, the main character, is trying to fit in school, is really, really struggling, but his brother Emery, and I love that they do this, no matter what Emery's doing, he's succeeding. He has all of the girls around him. All the girls are obsessed with him. Even like the older moms he starts hanging out with. Like, that I always find really funny. Eddie's just like, how do you do it, man? Eddie's trying so hard. Other than that, the father is just looking to start a business. He's opening a restaurant. That's how he's going to make it in the world. And the wife, Jessica, is just like shocked about how the rest of the world lives. And I really like this show because I've always found Chinese culture very, very fascinating, mostly for the fact, like, first of all, love the food, but that's honestly, like, shouldn't have mentioned that. That's not even, like, to the point. I'm always fascinated by their customs and their way of life because all of them, like, you ever see an old Chinese family? A lot of them live till, like, 90s and 100s, and then look at us over here in the West. Like, I'm specifically over here in Ontario, and it's some of the most unhealthy people that I've ever seen. Like, our water, our food, there's nothing going on with it. So I legitimately am, like, I always hate using the word impressed because, like, oh, what does everybody in the world need to be impressed by me for? You know, that's how I feel like it sounds, but I really have been always impressed by, like, just their way of life. And I keep meaning to pick up some books on, like, I don't know if there's any secrets to it, or if I just need to, if there's really not a ton of secrets to it and it's just, hey, eat this type of stuff. Like, I've always found it fascinating to the point. So and I find myself agreeing with Jessica a lot of times where it's like, what are these people doing? Like, you know, you should be focusing, you should be building your child to be as successful as possible, you know? So I found myself actually, like, agreeing with Jessica a lot of times, and that's what the show is just funny, you know? The actors are phenomenal, Eddie's great, and I don't know any of the actor names, okay? But I've seen the father in Ant-Man, I've seen the father in The Interview. He plays the same type of character, always hilarious, right? The smiles is beyond great, okay? And the actor for Jessica, man, she is absolutely phenomenal in her role. So it all made for a really nice experience, man. But then we move on from the pilot and we actually get into a little bit of problems over for Eddie in school. He's struggling because he's getting high marks in school, but then Jessica wants the boys to be challenged, wants to be educated even more. So she goes to school and is like, hey, he does not have enough homework. What do you guys teach her? My kid's too smart. And of course, like, it's funny that they can't just like sit back and relax, but at the end of the day, the mom still wants like the best for them. So she goes and actually searches it. I don't remember what it was. They called it something. I can't remember what it was. I thought it was like a Chinese school. I don't exactly remember. It was like some specific Chinese school, and I don't even know if they exist, to be honest, where like Chinese kids who do really good in school go to learn like with other really smart Chinese kids. I don't know if any of that exists, or if it's just something the show made up, or maybe I'm sounding really idiotic when I'm saying this. I just went to a regular Catholic school growing up. Anyways, so it's really fun because she's ruining the boys' time just by putting them in more school, but ultimately it might be good for them. Other than that, she is micromanaging the restaurant, which everybody can't stand. She starts yelling at people for eating croutons, just destroying the workers' fun, you know? And of course it leads to the husband just unfortunately kicking her out a little bit. But the fun part about that too was like Lewis was kind of framing it where it's like, oh my god, the boys need you at home. How are they supposed to learn? You need to homeschool them. So she somehow does the mental gymnastics where she's like, oh my god, how's the restaurant going to survive without me? Because Lewis is like, he comes home, he's having a great time, but he's like, oh man, Jessica, it's hard without you. And she's like, I need to get this restaurant under control. So she brings the boys over to school, or not to school, but she brings the boys homeschool over to the restaurant, and Lewis has to pretend to be happy to see her, but she learns the truth, and it all ends up okay. But after that, we end up moving on to the episode where Honey's introduced, and again, it's very, very strange because their whole goal, right, Lewis and Jessica, is to promote the restaurant. They need to make a living. At this point, the restaurant was struggling a little bit, so there's this block party going on, but Lewis wants to take advantage of it to just promote the restaurant, and they kind of get involved, and Jessica is getting involved with the power walkers, like just all the other, I don't know if they're all moms, but it's just the girls in the neighborhood, right? Just, they're always out power walking. Again, whoever they chose for all the actors, they're actually really, really good because they're very annoying. Jessica hates them. She hates what they like. She hates a gossip. And I'm like, Jessica. This is the mother that people need. Although a little less like, a little less aggressive, a little less hard to deal with. You kind of get the personality that I'm talking about. But she wants the best for her boys. She's like, we can't be growing our children around this degeneracy. What's going on? And of course, like, it's always the power walkers gossiping, causing problems. So she needs to make friends with them. She doesn't want to make friends with them. But then she actually bumps into this girl named Honey. And they actually hit it off. It'd be like a couple shows together. And it's great. But then she learns that the neighborhood women don't like her because she ruined a marriage. I wouldn't necessarily like somebody who did that too. But you know what? Honey seems to be an okay person. Although I would argue, no, not a really good person does that. But it could be the husband's problem. But then again, it's somebody who stepped in on a marriage, so no, we're good. Everybody sucks. There's no great friends, but I guess, you know what? At least Honey's pleasant to be around. So we go through a little bit of development with Jessica, where just to be cool, just to be fit in, although she doesn't want to, she's thinking about the well-being of the restaurant, living life. So honestly, as much as it sucks, you shouldn't feel bad for, not wanting to be friends with someone like Honey, but at the same time, it's difficult to do. But again, Jessica, because she's thinking of her kids first. She's thinking about the restaurant. She's thinking about raising her children and having them have the best life. It doesn't matter how people feel about her. She ends up coming around, though, and being friends with Honey no matter what. On the other side of the coin, Eddie decides that he wants to be cool and show that he can just flirt with Honey. So he starts flirting with Honey. Honey gets pissed off. I don't remember exactly what Eddie did, but at some point he just straight up objectified her. And she's like, oh, great. But then Honey actually does a really nice thing, and you can always relate to this, thinking if you were a young boy, right? If in the show she's hot, I think personally she's a little overrated compared to the level of hotness that the show ends up showing about her. But regardless, she ends up doing a nice thing. She's like, I understand what's going on. Which boys do you want to see me near? And then she ends up giving him a nice hug, chest to chest, and then Eddie gets a little handsy. She walks off, and Eddie is officially a guy to be impressed with because he bagged comparing to the age that these kids are at. He bagged an older woman. But then continuing on, we don't have really too much to talk about with the next couple episodes because they have some family visit, and Eddie starts working at Cattleman's Ranch because he wants to save up some money for a video game. Other than that, the only other important detail is he meets Nicole, which is it's so weird because we all know the feeling of liking a girl that's significantly older than us. That would never happen, but at the same time we have this little dream. I don't know how old Eddie is in the show because I remember being in grade 4 or something and seeing a girl in high school and thinking oh my god, maybe we could date one day, and it's just this random fantasy that you live. So Eddie's kind of having that with Nicole, the new neighbor, although Nicole is her personality is one of the I just do not understand people being attracted to that kind of personality. But you know what, at the same time, again, fantastic actor at what she does. She does bring a lot of humor to the show too, to be honest, being the bully character, sometimes while it started off rocky with the relationship, sometimes she's showing affection for Eddie because she understands that he ends up liking her. So it's a nice little dynamic that they have. Impossible, but she's not being a D-bag about it, right? But then we move on to the episode with Philip, and I loved this. If you guys ever watched South Park, it reminds me of Kyle's cousin, okay? It is the perfect Chinese boy, right? That's what Jessica looked at this, because there's this new kid named Philip, and out of the entire school, they choose Eddie to show him around because they're Chinese. And it's excuse me if you can hear my notification over there, but you can see how horrible that is. But I'm sure that happens in life, to be honest with you. And they just want them to be friends. Oh, maybe you'll bond with the Asian kid. It's so wrong to do, but at the same time, it makes for honestly a really good show because Eddie's like, you just want me to like him because like you just want to pair me up because we look alike. I don't get it. I think it's really funny. Then you learn that this kid is just supposedly perfect. Eddie's mom is just obsessed with him because I don't know, he plays the cello or something like that. I'm almost sure it was the cello, but he's very polite and I don't know. And again, I don't know because I of course don't experience the culture, but I don't know. It's like, is this expected of like Chinese children? I don't know personally. If anybody could actually shed some light, I would appreciate that. Or if they're just doing it for show, because I know that Chinese parents are not, I mean, supposedly they're difficult in their children, but they are very, very into like having their children grow up to be prepared for the world and educating them. So it's understandable that like Jessica would have that mentality where she's like, Eddie, why can't you be more like Philip? Philip ends up absolutely scumming this dude though, leave him at a concert, and Jessica ends up actually at the end just realizing how great Eddie really is because Eddie is a good person. Eddie wouldn't scum Philip the way that he did because the dude just ran off and just like, yep, got what I wanted from you. See you later, Eddie. Then again, for the other two episodes, there's not really a ton that we can break down here because you have Jessica learning to be a realtor, and that's actually really funny. She wants to sell houses because she's the best, and because she's aggressive, because she's a little bit raw, she ends up getting the job done, but of course she just doesn't have a license. She goes to get a license, but then she is having problems because they have their whole marriage and she missed a deal at some point. So that there's not a ton to break down for this review over here, but it just made for some funny moments, to be honest with you. And the other part about this little bit was I had a little bit of notes over here. Excuse me, guys. Oh, yes. So Jessica's old boyfriend comes and hangs out and she gets freaked out because Lewis isn't nervous, but Lewis is like, this dude, he likes guys, okay? And he shows up and it's like the most flamboyant guy you've ever seen in your life, and Jessica just can't see through it. And it's even said, I don't know if it's okay to say on YouTube. I don't know if it's okay to say, but like Jessica had a specific radar that was broken and she can't see that. So she's like, but he was my boyfriend. Then they go into the pictures, they start putting them together, and you can see that the dude's just like looking over at the other dude. It just, again, not a ton to break down. That's a problem I have with these kinds of reviews because it's more of like episode to episode based and there's not like a ton of in-depth story to really tell. It's just entertaining. After that, we have another episode, and you know what else I like about it too is you're watching these kids kind of learn their life lessons and grow up because you have a whole episode about white lies and how Lewis tells Eddie that white lies are okay, but he uses those white lies for the greater good and ends up getting himself elected to student council. Hilarious. I absolutely love it. And then we have another episode where we dive into Lewis becoming the coach of a basketball team, having a dream, winning the big game. Other than that, the season officially ends off with the school project where Eddie doesn't know what to do, but his brothers, of course, are making the best things ever. And Eddie, because he likes the culture and he kind of identifies with it a little bit, he ends up choosing Jamaica, and Jessica just ends up freaking out about it because she's like, my kids are no longer Chinese. And then she like turns up her like entire life to be like the most Chinese thing of all time. It feels really awkward talking about this on YouTube because it's so like, we don't laugh at these types of things anymore, right? And YouTube, just so you know, like I'm very grateful to be on the platform. I'm just breaking this down from an analytical perspective. We're just observing this. I'm not saying this is okay to make. I'm not saying this is incorrect to make. But it was like, honestly, it was really funny that she kept trying to get like Eddie to switch over to China. And he's like, why? And I don't want to. But it didn't end up until the end. She was kind of like overdoing it, right, with the Chinese everything. She was feeding them food that they didn't like because they got used to mac and cheese. And she's like, we don't eat mac and cheese. We eat this. And then Eddie was kind of freaking out. But then everything ends up getting settled because Eddie beat up some kid, or he yelled at some kid because I don't remember what he said. Something like, oh, China is all full of pandas or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was something that was offensive and kind of degrading. And Eddie kind of like on his own stepped up for his culture. Jessica just happened to watch, and Eddie was just getting himself into trouble, but in the best way possible again. So with season 1, I really enjoyed it. I love the family. All of them are hilarious. Emery is succeeding. Eddie trying to fit in, Lewis and Jessica trying to make their way through the world. Like, it all completely works. And there's not a ton to talk about the grandma, but the grandma's around too. She's funny. It makes for a very, very interesting premise, and it was just a flat out good time. I can't wait to watch the rest of the show. We're going to be watching, I think it was 6 seasons. Regardless, let me know what you thought about season 1 down below. Thank you very much for being here and watching, everybody. While we don't have another fresh off the boat video, at this time, why don't you check out this video on screen? YouTube thinks you'll like it the best. We review a lot of stuff. Love to have you over there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.